Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going to be tackling a topic that seems to be constantly in the headlines and sparking debate around the world: immigration. We've got a really interesting stack of sources for this one. Expert discussions on YouTube, articles on the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border, and policy analysis from around the world. We're going to try to unpack current trends, the impact on various nations, and the challenges they face.
It's interesting how immigration is often viewed through a national lens when it's really a global story. It intertwines economies, cultures, and even the destinies of individuals and nations.
You're absolutely right. So let's start by trying to grasp the scale of global migration. Our sources indicate that the U.S. receives about 20% of the world's migrants, making it the top destination. So what makes the U.S. such a magnet for people seeking new lives?
Well, historically, the U.S. has been seen as a land of opportunity, with a strong economy, a relatively stable political system, and a culture that, despite its complexities, values individual freedom and achievement. And this image continues to attract migrants from all corners of the globe.
That makes sense. But we also see a significant shift in migrant origins, moving away from Latin America and towards Asia, with India and China leading the way. And this raises questions about how receiving nations adapt their integration policies to cater to these diverse populations.
It's a crucial consideration. Integration policies need to be flexible and responsive to the unique needs and challenges of different migrant groups. Language acquisition, cultural sensitivity training, and access to social services tailored to specific cultural backgrounds can all play a vital role in fostering successful integration.
For sure. Now let's zoom in on the U.S. It's home to the largest immigrant population globally, a staggering 45 million. And projections suggest it could reach nearly 80 million by 2065. This ongoing appeal of the quote-unquote American dream is striking, even amidst global uncertainties.
Well, the U.S. has always been a nation of immigrants, and its history is deeply intertwined with waves of migration. This history shapes the nation's identity and its approach to immigration, even as debates continue over how to balance the benefits of immigration with concerns about security and social cohesion.
And it's not a monolithic picture, is it? The sources mention that about 3/4 of U.S. immigrants are authorized, with about half being naturalized citizens. Yet there's still a significant population of about 10.5 million unauthorized immigrants. Even though those numbers have declined since peaking in 2007, what factors are contributing to this decline?
Well, several factors are at play. Increased border security measures, economic downturns affecting both origin and destination countries, and demographic changes in Mexico, historically a primary source of unauthorized immigration.
That's insightful. But the decline doesn't negate the complexities and risks associated with unauthorized immigration. Speaking of pathways to legal status, our sources discuss the diversity visa program. Can you explain how this program contributes to diversifying the U.S. immigrant population?
Sure, the diversity visa program is a lottery system that aims to diversify the U.S. immigrant pool. It allows a certain number of immigrants from countries with historically low rates of immigration to the U.S. to obtain permanent residency. This program ensures representation from a wider range of nations, reflecting the U.S.'s commitment to being a melting pot of cultures.
It's really interesting how this program aims to address historical imbalances in immigration patterns. But now shifting gears a bit, the situation at the U.S.-Mexico border presents a starkly different picture, with 2022 being the deadliest year on record, with 853 migrant deaths. This really highlights the extreme risks people were willing to take for a chance at a better life.
It's truly tragic. Those attempting to cross the border face numerous dangers: treacherous terrain, extreme weather conditions, and sadly exploitation by criminal organizations engaged in human smuggling.
And our sources reveal that these smuggling networks are increasingly sophisticated, using color-coded wristbands to track migrants and exploiting vulnerabilities in the system. It's a chilling illustration of the lengths people go to and the desperation that fuels their journey. They're putting their lives in the hands of these smugglers, who charge exorbitant fees, anywhere from $2,000 to $12,000. This often leads to migrants becoming trapped in what's known as debt bondage.
Debt bondage is a form of modern-day slavery where individuals are forced to work to pay off a debt, often with little or no control over their working conditions or wages. Sadly, many migrants find themselves in this situation after being smuggled across the border, adding another layer of exploitation to their already perilous journey.
A tragic situation indeed. One source described a particularly harrowing case involving the deaths of dozens of migrants in a Texas tractor trailer. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of these desperate journeys and the ethical dilemmas surrounding border security.
These stories underscore the need for comprehensive solutions that address both the push and pull factors driving migration. We need to create safe and legal pathways for those seeking refuge or opportunity, while also addressing the root causes of displacement, such as poverty, violence, and persecution.
Absolutely. Let's take a step back for a second and analyze these push and pull factors. What are the primary forces driving people to leave their homes and embark on these often dangerous journeys?
Okay, so push factors are those compelling individuals to leave their countries of origin. These often include economic hardship, lack of opportunities, political instability, violence, and persecution. Essentially, these are situations where people feel they have no choice but to leave, in search of a better future for themselves and their families.
And on the flip side, we have the pull factors, those attracting people to specific destinations. What makes countries like the U.S. so attractive to migrants?
Pull factors can include things like higher wages and better living standards, greater economic opportunities, political stability, and even family reunification. Established migrant communities can also serve as a pull factor, offering social support and a sense of familiarity in a new land.
Yeah, it's like a complex equation, isn't it? Weighing the risks and challenges against the hope for a better life. But as we've seen, this hope can sometimes clash with the realities of integration.
Absolutely. The influx of migrants can create tensions and challenges for receiving countries, leading to concerns about cultural change, competition for jobs and resources, and even security risks. These fears can fuel anti-immigrant sentiment and make it more difficult for migrants to integrate and build new lives.
It's a delicate balancing act, for sure. And that brings us to the next chapter in our deep dive, how different countries are responding to this global phenomenon through their policies and the public discourse surrounding immigration.
Governments around the world are grappling with this issue, seeking to find a balance between controlling their borders, protecting human rights, and addressing economic needs. The approaches vary widely, and public opinion plays a significant role in shaping these policies.
Right. Our sources focus on the policy responses and public opinion trends in three distinct nations, the U.S., Canada, and South Korea, each with their own history and approach to immigration. So let's start with the U.S., a nation with a long and often contentious history of immigration debates. What's the current political climate surrounding this issue?
Well, the U.S. has always been a nation shaped by immigration, but it also has a deeply divided political landscape, particularly regarding immigration. Different views on border security, unauthorized immigration, and pathways to citizenship for those already residing in the country make finding common ground a constant challenge.
It seems like navigating this political landscape requires understanding how public opinion has evolved. One source highlighted a shift in American views on immigration, with more people now seeing immigrants as a strength rather than a burden. This is a stark contrast to the sentiment prevalent in the 1990s.
It's a significant shift, suggesting a growing recognition of the contributions immigrants make to the U.S. economy, society, and culture. However, it's not uniform across the political spectrum. While a majority of Democrats see immigrants as a strength, only about half of Republicans share that view, indicating a persistent partisan divide.
And this divide inevitably influences policy priorities. Democrats often advocate for more inclusive policies, focusing on pathways to citizenship and protecting migrant rights. In contrast, Republicans tend to prioritize border security and stricter enforcement measures.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. Finding common ground on immigration policy in the U.S. remains a major challenge, particularly given the deep partisan divide. It requires a willingness to engage in nuanced dialogue, recognize the complexities of the issue, and move beyond simplistic solutions.
Finding those nuanced solutions is never easy, especially in a politically charged environment. Now let's turn our attention to Canada, often perceived as having a more welcoming stance on immigration. What's the situation there?
Canada has long prided itself on being a multicultural nation built by immigrants. Its immigration policies have historically focused on attracting skilled workers and promoting economic growth. However, even in Canada, the public consensus on immigration is being tested.
Oh, that's interesting. What factors are contributing to this shift in public opinion?
Well, several concerns seem to be driving this shift. Rising housing costs, competition for jobs, and increasing pressure on social services are leading some Canadians to question the pace and scale of immigration. This, in turn, is putting pressure on the government to reevaluate its policies.
So it's not necessarily about being against immigration, but about managing it in a way that addresses these concerns and ensures the well-being of all Canadians.
Precisely. Canada's recent policy changes reflect this shift. They've actually reduced immigration targets for the next few years, aiming to achieve a net population decline. This marks a significant departure from their previous approach of driving population growth through immigration.
Wow, that is a substantial change. It appears the Canadian government is responding to public anxieties and attempting to strike a balance that addresses both economic needs and social concerns. For our final stop on this policy tour, let's head over to South Korea, a country with a very different history and approach to immigration.
hmm South Korea has traditionally been a very homogeneous society, with limited experience in large-scale immigration. However, the country is facing a demographic crisis. With a rapidly aging population and a declining birth rate, it's actually a challenge shared by many developed nations.
Yeah, it's a global trend that's forcing countries to rethink their traditional approaches to population growth and workforce sustainability.
So how is South Korea responding to this demographic challenge? Well, they're recognizing that immigration might be part of the solution to their demographic woes. South Korea has been gradually increasing its intake of foreign workers, particularly in sectors facing labor shortages. This shift reflects a pragmatic response to changing economic and demographic realities.
But integrating newcomers into a society that's not accustomed to diversity can present its own set of challenges.
Absolutely. One source emphasized the need for South Korea to develop comprehensive policies and support systems for foreign residents to facilitate their integration and ensure their well-being. This includes language training, cultural orientation programs, and access to healthcare and social services.
It seems like South Korea is embarking on a journey of adaptation toward a more multicultural future. However, as we've observed in the US and Canada, this is not a straightforward path. There are bound to be complexities and adjustments as different perspectives and priorities intersect.
Indeed, it necessitates a willingness to engage in open and honest dialogue, acknowledge both the benefits and challenges of immigration, and find solutions that work for the long-term well-being of all involved.
You've hit the nail on the head there. This is not just about numbers, policies, and economic indicators. It's about people, their hopes, their dreams, and the challenges they face navigating a world in constant flux. So what struck you as most insightful from the sources we've explored so far?
What's fascinating to me is the interconnectedness of these stories. Global economic forces, demographic trends, and political events all play a role in shaping migration patterns. It's evident that no nation is immune to these forces, and the choices they make have ripple effects felt far beyond their borders.
That's a powerful observation. It underscores the need for international cooperation and a shared understanding of the complexities of migration. It also highlights the fact that while each nation has its own unique context and set of challenges, there are common threads that connect us all.
Precisely. And this brings us to a crucial question for the future. How will emerging global trends like climate change and AI automation impact migration patterns in the coming decades?
That's a question that really sparks my curiosity, and we'll delve into that in our next segment.
So picking up where we left off, how will emerging global trends like climate change and AI automation impact migration patterns in the coming decades? It's a question that demands we consider the interplay of technology, environmental shifts, and human adaptation.
Okay, so let's start with climate change. We're already witnessing its devastating effects: extreme weather events, rising sea levels, resource scarcity. How do you see this playing out in the context of migration?
Climate change acts as a threat multiplier, exacerbating existing inequalities and vulnerabilities, forcing people to flee their homes in search of safety and survival. We can anticipate a surge in climate displacement in the coming years as regions become increasingly uninhabitable due to drought, flooding, or extreme heat. This raises critical questions about our capacity to adapt and the ethical implications of climate-induced migration.
Essentially, we're talking about a whole new category of migrants then: climate refugees. This will undoubtedly put immense pressure on receiving countries to provide aid and support, raising questions about resource allocation, infrastructure, and social integration.
Absolutely. The international community needs to develop innovative adaptation and integration strategies to address the needs of climate-displaced populations. This necessitates a coordinated global effort to mitigate the causes of climate change and provide support to those affected by its consequences. Failure to do so could lead to increased global instability, conflict over resources, and further displacement.
Yeah, it's a daunting challenge for sure, but one we can't afford to ignore. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's explore the potential impact of AI automation on migration. While AI holds the potential to create new jobs and opportunities, it could also lead to widespread job displacement, potentially driving more people to migrate in search of work.
AI automation is a complex phenomenon with both potential benefits and risks. It has the capacity to revolutionize industries and boost economic growth, but it also poses a significant risk to workers in sectors susceptible to automation. The key lies in ensuring that the benefits of AI are shared broadly, and that workers are equipped with the skills needed to thrive in a rapidly changing job market.
So it's not just about technological advancement. It's about anticipating and managing the social and economic consequences of that advancement. We need to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to adapt and succeed in this evolving landscape.
Precisely. Investment in education, training, and social safety nets is crucial to supporting workers during this transition. Failure to do so could lead to increased inequality, social unrest, and potentially further migration as people seek opportunities elsewhere.
Right. It's a reminder that technology is never neutral. It's shaped by the choices we make and the values we prioritize. And these choices will determine whether AI leads to a more equitable and prosperous future for all, or exacerbates existing divides.
And these divides are often reflected in the very language we use to discuss immigration. One of our sources highlighted a critical distinction between two terms that are frequently used interchangeably: migrant and refugee.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I was actually wondering about the nuances of these terms. Could you elaborate on the difference between a migrant and a refugee?
Sure, a migrant is someone who moves from one country to another for various reasons, seeking better economic opportunities, joining family members, or pursuing education. A refugee, on the other hand, is forced to flee their country due to a well-founded fear of persecution based on their race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group.
So a refugee is essentially fleeing danger or oppression, while a migrant might be moving for a variety of reasons, not necessarily related to safety concerns. This distinction seems crucial for understanding the motivations behind migration and shaping appropriate responses.
Exactly. This distinction also has significant legal implications. Refugees have a right to seek asylum in other countries and are entitled to international protection under the 1951 Refugee Convention. Migrants, while deserving of respect and fair treatment, might not have the same legal protections.
It's a reminder that words matter, and that using precise language can help us better understand the complexities of immigration and the different experiences of those on the move. This understanding is essential for formulating policies that are both effective and humane.
You've hit the nail on the head. It underscores the need to approach this issue with empathy, recognizing the human stories behind the statistics and the diverse motivations that drive people to cross borders.
Well said. It's clear that immigration is a multifaceted issue with no easy answers. We've examined the global trends, the driving forces, policy responses, and the human stories that make this topic so compelling and complex. So what does all this mean for the future of immigration?
The future of immigration will likely be shaped by the convergence of several powerful forces: climate change, AI automation, demographic shifts, and evolving political landscapes. Navigating this convergence will require foresight, adaptability, and a commitment to international cooperation.
It sounds like we're heading into uncharted territory. The way we navigate these challenges will have profound consequences. For individuals, communities, and nations around the world, it's a lot to take in.
It is. But by engaging in open and informed discussions, by challenging our assumptions, and by recognizing the shared humanity that connects us all, we can work toward creating a more just and sustainable future for everyone.
Well said. And as we move into this uncertain future, one question keeps coming to mind. In a world increasingly shaped by climate change, technological disruption, and demographic shifts, what will the future of immigration look like? And how can nations prepare to navigate the challenges and opportunities it presents?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a question that requires a shift in our thinking. We need to move beyond traditional frameworks of border control and enforcement and embrace a more holistic approach that recognizes the interconnectedness of our world and the shared responsibility we have to create a future where everyone has a chance to thrive.
That's a powerful vision. But where do we even begin?
It starts with recognizing that immigration is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be managed. It's about finding ways to harness that potential of migration while mitigating its risks and ensuring that the benefits are shared broadly.
So it's about creating a system that's both fair and sustainable, a system that recognizes the rights and dignity of all individuals, while also addressing the legitimate concerns of receiving nations.
Precisely. And that requires a multi-pronged approach. We need to invest in climate change adaptation and mitigation. To reduce displacement, we need to prepare our workforces for the impacts of AI automation and ensure that everyone has access to the skills and opportunities they need to succeed. And we need to create legal pathways for migration that are safe, orderly, and humane.
It's a tall order, but it's one we can't shy away from. It requires a commitment to collaboration innovation. and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely. The future is not something that simply happens to us. It's something we create through the choices we make today.
And those choices will determine whether immigration becomes a source of division and conflict, or a force for progress and prosperity.
Well said. I think this is a good place to pause for now.
So we've covered a lot in our exploration of immigration, from global trends to the impact of emerging technologies, and the ethical dilemmas surrounding migration. As we delve deeper into this complex issue, one key takeaway stands out to me. The way we frame immigration significantly impacts our responses.
Yeah, you're right. Often immigration is presented as a problem, a burden, or even a threat. But what if we shifted our perspective and viewed it as a potential solution, a resource, or even an asset? This reframing could fundamentally change how we approach migration management.
That's a really thought-provoking shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on building walls and reinforcing borders, we could prioritize building bridges and fostering connections. Instead of fearing cultural change, we could embrace diversity as a strength.
Exactly. This shift in mindset requires us to acknowledge the contributions immigrants make to our economies, societies, and cultures. It also demands that we address the root causes of forced migration, such as poverty, conflict, and climate change, which often drive people to seek refuge or opportunity elsewhere.
It sounds like a more holistic and humane approach is needed, one that recognizes the shared humanity of all people regardless of their immigration status. This approach would require a shift from viewing immigration solely through a security or economic lens to one that prioritizes human rights, dignity, and well-being.
Absolutely. This requires investment in integration programs that support immigrants in learning the language, finding employment, and becoming active members of their new communities. It also means promoting intercultural understanding and combating discrimination to create a more inclusive and welcoming society.
Yeah, it's about fostering a society where everyone feels valued and has the opportunity to contribute and succeed, regardless of their background or origin. This requires a shift from viewing immigrants as outsiders to recognizing them as potential partners in building a more prosperous and equitable future.
Precisely. And this brings us to another critical aspect of the immigration debate: the ethical considerations surrounding migration policies. One of our sources sparked a fascinating discussion about the ethics of deportation, pitting arguments for maintaining national sovereignty and enforcing immigration laws against the moral imperative to protect human rights and the well-being of all individuals, regardless of their legal status.
It's a complex dilemma with no easy answers. How do we reconcile the need to uphold the rule of law with our moral obligation to treat all human beings with dignity and respect?
It's a challenging balancing act. On the one hand, nations have a right to control their borders and enforce their laws. On the other hand, we have a moral obligation to treat all human beings with dignity and respect, regardless of their immigration status. This requires us to grapple with difficult questions. What happens to undocumented immigrants who have established deep roots in their communities, who contribute to the economy, and who are raising families? Is deportation, even if it means tearing apart families and disrupting lives, a just solution?
It's a stark reminder that we're not just dealing with abstract legal concepts. We're dealing with real people with hopes, dreams, and vulnerabilities. Finding ethical solutions requires considering the human cost of our policies.
Exactly. It challenges us to find solutions that are both just and compassionate, solutions that uphold the rule of law, while also recognizing the human cost of enforcement. This might involve exploring pathways to legalization for those who meet certain criteria, creating more flexible visa programs, or finding ways to address the root causes of forced migration, to reduce the need for people to leave their homes in the first place.
It sounds like we need to find a way to balance competing values and priorities, which is never an easy task. It requires open and honest dialogue, a willingness to listen to different perspectives, and a commitment to finding common ground.
You're absolutely right. And it requires a shift from viewing immigration as a zero-sum game, where one side wins at the expense of the other, to one where we seek solutions that benefit both receiving nations and migrants themselves.
This conversation has really opened my eyes to the multifaceted nature of immigration. We've explored the global trends, the driving forces, the policy responses, the ethical dilemmas, and the human stories that make this topic so compelling and complex.
It's a reminder that immigration is not just an issue to be debated. It's a reality to be lived, a story that unfolds in the lives of millions of people around the world. And it's a story that will continue to evolve as we navigate an increasingly interconnected and rapidly changing world.
As we wrap up this deep dive, what key takeaway would you like our listener to reflect on?
I think the most important takeaway is that immigration is not a monolithic issue. It's a complex tapestry woven from individual stories, global trends, economic realities, and ethical considerations. Approaching this issue with nuanced empathy and a willingness to engage in constructive dialogue is essential if we hope to create a future where migration benefits both individuals and societies as a whole.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of immigration. We encourage you to continue exploring this complex and vital topic, to challenge your own assumptions, and to seek out diverse perspectives. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.